Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Alex Chisnell, as always, for this afternoon session. I'm coming to you live from Poole in Dorset, and today I have got John Courtney with me, founder and chief executive of boardroomadvisors.co.uk. So John is going to be hosting today. We are talking about growth strategy, growing your business post-pandemic, post-COVID-19. And during this session, John is going to show you how to discover market gaps by addressing some core business growth questions around the following subjects. So defining customer needs, lead generation, customer personas, value proposition, and communication tools. So thank you all for joining us. I see we've got people from all over the country and beyond. So we've got a really good audience here, John, by the way. We've got Lee from Peterborough, Ash from Oxfordshire, Richard from Chepstow, Jazz from Wolves, Julie from Bath, Gareth from Hampshire, Harriet from Birmingham, John from North Links, Jennifer from Aylesbury, Joanne from Preston, Mark from Birmingham. Wow, everyone's piling in. Hugh from Salisbury, Emma from Hereford, Karen from Bury, Paul from Warwick, Alan from Cheshire. Wow, got loads. We've even got Chris from southwest of France as well, Kath from Bristol, and Roy from Lytham has just joined us as well. So, wow, you've got a great audience here, John. I'm going to hand over to you. Well, Germany's just jumped in as well. We've got Samir from Frankfurt now. Brilliant. So, John, I'm going to focus the screen on your presentation, growth strategy to maximize opportunities after lockdown, and hand over to your good self to take the presentation away, sir.
Great. Thanks very much, Alex, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. Just to tell you who I am, John Courtney, Chief Executive and founder of Boardroom Advisors. We provide part-time executive and non-executive directors to later stage startups, scale-ups, and SMEs throughout the UK. And I'm glad, Alex, you said somebody came on from Germany. We have just started expanding into Europe with Portugal and Ireland, and in discussions with other countries. In the UK is where we're established, and we have about 75 people in the UK advising clients. Okay, and some of the things that we advise clients about, the big things for us are around strategy, growth, funding, and exit. And so today's webinar is obviously about growth strategy to maximize opportunities after lockdown. So as we come out and we get back to work, what sort of things are we going to be looking at, and how are we going to best do that? It's a great opportunity. I know there's lots of nasty stuff, but it's a great opportunity to reassess some of your business strategy, particularly around growth, to make sure that your growth strategy is in line with some of the changes that come about. And so I want to start with having a look at a new tool that we've developed. Before we do that, sorry, I forgot this slide was first. This is what we generally some teaser questions with clients when we talk about growth. How do you discuss it? Who's responsible? Do they have somebody at director level? Sometimes companies have. Yes, well, we have a marketing assistant, and they're responsible for growth. So, can it be done at director level? Do they have somebody who has some experience around growth? And by that, I mean both marketing and sales. And how do you analyze growth? What data do you access? How do you track success? And do you have help? Do you have a third party, like a board advisor or a non-exec director, helping you with growth, or do you do it internally? These are just trigger questions to see where a company sits. So as I said earlier, I want just to whiz through, apologies to people who've seen my business strategy webinar. We're just going to spend a couple of minutes on this particular tool because it's relevant not just for overall business strategy, but also for growth strategy. And this is a crisis strategy assessment. And so it's asking yourself some questions about the current situation and how that might change things. So starting, by the way, there are free downloads available. We'll come to that at the end. So first of all, defining the crisis in one sentence. What is the crisis? How does it manifest itself? Relatively easy in today's situation, but it may be tomorrow's situation, tomorrow's crisis, and it may not be quite as easy to define. And then having a think about what's likely to change in the world. I don't just mean, I mean in the world generally. So, for example, there may be less foreign travel, less plane flights, less package tours, and so on. That's just an example of a big picture. So you're narrowing the picture down now. So what's likely to change in your industry? And it's just stopping and, with a clean sheet of paper, having a think about how things might affect in your industry, and then how might that affect your own revenue streams? Are there, are some areas going to increase and some areas perhaps decrease? And what about your value proposition? We'll come to value proposition in a minute. I think it's one of the most important growth areas to make sure that you've got nailed. Defining your value proposition, very important. But how will it change, or will it change with COVID-19? Will you have to completely reassess, i.e. pivot, or will you just have to tweak what it is that's unique about your business going forward? And then how will this alter your customer segments and those relationships? Are you going to be selling to the same types of people? Are you going to be selling less to some and more to others? So just thinking through that particular process. And what about your distribution channels and your distribution partners? Have you always been selling direct? Have you always been selling through third parties? And again, with the current crisis, is that likely to change? Are there more partners? Are there different partners? Are you going to be selling more direct, less direct? Just thinking through the implications, really. And what about your resource needs? Staff, for example, are you going to need more or less staff? Some companies have done quite well, is a horrible thing to say, but their business has grown during the pandemic. They may need more staff. Yours may not have done. So are you going to have to shrink your resources, and not just people, perhaps other resources? One of the things I'm sure people will be thinking about now is offices. Do they need as many offices? Do they need offices at all? At Boardroom Advisors, we're a completely virtual company, and it's worked quite well so far. And we've no intention of changing. It's not applicable for everybody, but it's just looking at your resource needs and your cost structure. Again, that's linked to your resources and offices and so on. But what about other costs? Is there going to be any effect because of COVID-19? So, sorry, let me just go back and pause there for a second. So that's really just having a look at what's going to change in the crisis. We're going to move on now, and we're going to have a look at some of the, I guess, established growth tools to analyze some of your marketing, some of your sales, and have a look at some of these. And as I say, it's a great time to reassess all these in light perhaps of this crisis strategy assessment, going back and having a look at some of the things. So establishing the brand. This is all about what is it that you're selling. I'm going to try and stay away, if I can, from marketing and growth and sales jargon as much as possible, but it's not completely possible. So, but in words of one syllable, what is it that you're selling? So having a look at your customer needs, nailing a value proposition. By that, I mean, what is different and unique about your company? That's the English version. How are you going to get that message across to your target customers or clients? And what about the product? That can be a service as well, but and the development of the brand. What is it that you're selling? And that's kind of the first big question. And is that going to stay the same in the current situation, or is that going to adjust? And one of the ways of looking at this, just a little simple tool that we run with clients, but works quite well. Best done in a group, and best done kind of with brainstorming techniques. So just in the group, you start bottom left-hand corner, and in your industry, what is it that everybody has? So in our industry, for boardroom advisors, everybody has advisors, for example. Most people have good advisors. Some have better than others, but just state the blindingly obvious. What is it that everybody in your industry has? Then move along to the next box and have a go at what's weaker at your own company compared to your competitors. And this is where brainstorming techniques come in. Everybody chips in, nobody criticizes. It's all top of the head stuff. And don't worry if it's something minor or something left field, just get it down. And only after you're starting to run dry to perhaps amalgamate some smaller ones into bigger ones, perhaps to knock out some ones that aren't appropriate, but have a list of what's weaker at your company, and be honest with yourself. You can't be good at all things. So moving up to top right box, stronger at my company. This is where it's really important. So what is it in your business, in your proposition, that is better at your company, is stronger than your competitors? Where is it you have the edge? Is it on service? And then try not to slip into the easy phrase, saying better service without being able to qualify it. We all like to think that we provide better service and we communicate better, and these general things. But if that's true, that's great. But you have to be able to quantify it. So again, be tough, be honest with yourself. What is stronger? And if there aren't many things, just have a short list, but you have to be honest with yourself. Now, of that list of things that are stronger at your company, what is it that's actually unique that nobody else has? It might be a combination of things. It might not just be one thing on its own. Maybe some other companies don't have A plus B. Maybe some companies have A, some have B, but nobody combines it together. But you have to be able to have something that is unique about your company. Otherwise, why are people going to buy from you? And it's pulling the stronger elements out of the stronger at my company, the top right, pulling the bigger ones of those, the ones that really stand out, the ones that are genuinely unique, into what's unique in my company. Useful exercise. We'll use that in the value proposition in a moment. If you can't pull anything into that unique to my company box, and some companies can't, honestly, then have a look at your value proposition. Have a look at what it is that you're offering to the marketplace and how you can make it unique. It might be around delivery, it might be about product, it might be about service, it might be about guarantees, it might be about price, it might be a combination of things. That's just a quick checklist, but reassess your proposition to the marketplace if you have nothing or very little in the unique to my company box. The more you have in that top left-hand box, the more customers you're likely to get, the higher price you're likely to be able to charge, and the more profitable you're likely to be. I know there may be some questions on this. We'll come to questions at the end if you don't mind, and I'll just go through the slides. Alex will pick up if you've got any questions. Then there's a box to put them in on your screen. Just moving on, we'll come back in a moment to value proposition, but before we do, lead generation, and this is all about who are you selling to. That's the English version, what it means in common sense, and it's identifying who the decision makers are. So are you selling to director level? Are you selling to managerial level? Is it the IT director? Is it the managing director? Is it the, who is the decision maker? It's really important, because if you connect with the wrong people, they may be gatekeepers, and that's fine. But if you can't focus on who it is you're trying to sell to, then it's very difficult to focus your message out there, and to define your process. Have a look at your customer segmentation. So we mentioned this earlier. Who is it you're selling to? Does that stay the same in the current situation? So it's partly who you're currently selling to. So you can analyze the data that you have, perhaps through your Google Analytics, perhaps through your sales processes and pipeline. Who is it you are currently selling to? And if you haven't done a segmentation process, try and group them into categories. Have a look at them by industry, by location, by age, by sex, all sorts of different ways you can cut and slice and segment your customers. Why do that? Because if you can work out who has already been buying your product or service, then you can focus your growth efforts, focus your marketing campaigns to more of the same people. And it may, for example, if you're selling to over 60s, and that's a very popular segment for you, and perhaps a very profitable segment, then you can focus some of your growth campaigns towards that segment, because then you're more likely to get some more of those same people. It's just common sense, really. But don't just have a look at your existing segments, particularly in the current situation with COVID-19. Have a look at other possible segments that you might be able to supply as a result of the changes, or perhaps might be able to supply anyway. Who you're already selling to isn't necessarily the whole answer. It's half the answer. It may be the whole of it, but perhaps stop and think. Analyze other segments. Could we also sell the same product or service to different segments? Would we have to alter it? Would we have to alter the pricing? Would we have to alter our messaging? Whatever. There may be some tweaks that are necessary, but can you possibly sell to other segments? And what about the routes to the market and the marketing channels? This is all about going direct and going through third parties and so on and so forth. What about those channels? Again, have a look at what current routes to market are you using? What marketing channels are you using? Are you only selling online, or are you not selling online at all? Have a look at these routes to market and the marketing channels, and again, reassess. Is this likely to change? Is it beneficial to tweak what you currently do in light of the new situation? So the summary there is about who you're selling to. In the past, does that stay the same in the future? I mentioned we'd come back to value proposition. And I do think this is one of the most important things in sales, marketing, growth generally. This is what's different about you. This is why people should buy you and your product and your service. I once did I spent a whole day with a client going through various different value propositions, one for the company as a whole, and they were selling to 3 individual sectors, and we came up with different value propositions, slightly different value propositions for each of those segments. And it took us all day. Gracious, all day. Yes, because it's really important. And the company value proposition, they put, rightly, I thought, front and center on the homepage on the website. Why? Because that was what that's why customers should be dealing with the company as a whole. And then they had some internal landing pages for the 3 different types of customers. And again, the value propositions for those were front and center on those internal landing pages. So to make it very clear what service or product as a service in their instance, that they were supplying to those 3 individual different types of customers. One of my pet hates is you go onto a website and you can't really quite work out what it is that they do, or who they're selling to, or exactly what their value proposition. Why should I buy from these people? Some companies kind of assume that which is crazy. You go onto a website a lot of the time to research a company, to research a product. You've heard a product or a service is good, and you want it in words of one syllable. This is what we do, and this is why you should buy from us. And if you can't do that early on a website, then people leave. So being very clear about your value proposition, not just on your website, but on all of your literature, and internally, through, all your staff should know what your value proposition is. And this is the kind of structure that the company I mentioned, we spent all day doing for them. So starting with a headline. What's the end benefit that you're offering in one short sentence? You can look at this also as like an elevator pitch if you were selling a company or getting investment for a company or whatever, but it's the same is sort of true if you're selling a product or a service. So it can mention the product or the customer, but it has to grab the attention. Now I've made a pretty poor stab at this. I think, having done this webinar a few times, ours is we provide real world board advisors to scale up businesses. It does say what we do. It doesn't maybe grab the attention quite well enough. I need to work on that. But it does at least mention the product and the customer in one sentence. And when I'm in a networking situation, I will use that or something similar to that. As well as having a headline, some supporting points to have in your back pocket if you're asked about it, or you're asked to expand, or perhaps to use in different circumstances. So ours, for example, we have no recruitment fee, we have no long-term contract, we can swap advisors as needs change, it's very affordable. One we haven't got down there, but we probably should, is that we can have people in place in days. So that we have lots of benefits, key benefits, which if people kindly say, "What do you do, John?" I say, "We, real world board advisors to scale up businesses." "Oh, tell me more." I wish. Then I'll go through some of those supporting points. So have a think about your own value proposition. Do you have one? If you don't have one, have a think about using this particular structure. It's an aid memoir. The slides will be available after the webinar. And even if you have a value proposition, as I said earlier, just go back, reassess. Is it the same? Is it exactly the same as it was before COVID-19? Do you need to tweak it? Do you need to adjust it? Is the headline going to be different and tweaked or completely changed? There's one company, I forget the name, fortunately, the brand of it, but there's I think it was Office Pantry. I think they're Bristol based, and they were supplying food to offices. Now, in lockdown, of course, there were no offices to support, or very few offices to supply food to. So they pivoted to home pantry. What a great pivot and a great move. Now, of course, as people are going back to offices, are they going to pivot back? Are they going to have two brands in the marketplace? I don't know. I haven't talked to the company concerned. It was just something that came to me top of the head, really. So have a think. How does your value proposition change in the current climate? And then communication tools. This is all about how are you telling people. That's the English version of what the communication tools. There's loads of them. But remember, first of all, that you have both internal and external audiences. And getting the message about your product, about your service, about your value proposition to your internal audience, that's your staff, your directors, your partners as well. That's vital, because if they don't understand the message, then they're not going to be getting it right out there. So that's really, really important. And have a think about personas. There are buyer personas, and it's quite interesting just to try and do a pen picture of who is it you're trying to sell to. We had that on one of the earlier slides, and you can draw a little pen picture. So you can have in your mind's eye who it is you're trying to sell to, and therefore any messages about growth or marketing, or you can angle towards those personas. And then when you're actually getting the message out there, lots of different channels. We all have websites these days, which is excellent. And then the other ways, you kind of have to pick and choose. You can't do all things well. Particularly smaller businesses on limited budgets. If you're Coca-Cola, that's fine. You can be on every social media, have a profile everywhere about everything. But if you're an SME, as Boardroom Advisors is, then we have to focus. And for example, we focus very heavily on LinkedIn. It's the traditional B2B channel. Not the only one. Facebook's excellent, and there's lots of B2B stuff happening on Facebook and on Twitter and so on. But you have to pick and choose your battlegrounds. So we go very deep on LinkedIn, and less so on Twitter and Pinterest, because we're not very visual, really. Isn't really for us. You have to pick and choose which social media, but also pick and choose the other communication tools that you use. So SEO, that's natural search, and paid search. Neither of them are for everybody. Dragging people to your website, either through things like keyword research and title tags and so on, that's natural search, or paying Google AdWords, or paying for Facebook ads and so on. Is it relevant? And I always think about your target customer or target client. Where are they on social media? On search, are people actually searching for your product or service? So for Boardroom Advisors, there aren't many people actually searching for a part-time managing director or a part-time commercial director. They're generally searching to try and solve the problems that they have: growth, funding, exit, strategy, these sort of things. So we do some paid search, but we do it around those search terms, not around part-time managing director, because there's no search volume. So just have a think about what's relevant for you. PR, we use PR because people aren't actually searching for the service that we provide. Therefore, we have to get the message out there that our service exists and how that could be useful to some companies. And we use PR in order to do that. And we also use trade shows, very useful for us. Trade shows are a bit old school, aren't they? But look at me, I can do old school. We find them are very effective, as long as you have a strategy before, during, and after your trade show. It's manned properly. There's proper stands. We have clipboards and questions that we ask people, and priorities and so on. And we have people back at base the day after a show following up, sending follow-up emails and so on. You have to have a process. You have to be thorough about such things. And again, they're relevant for some companies and not for others. Advertising, lots of different methods, and some suitable for you, some not. Telesales, again, a bit old school, can be effective in the right circumstance. So just pick your battlegrounds. Don't try and do all things. Try and pick the ones that are most likely to be relevant for you, and that's how you're telling people. Okay, so those are kind of the main slides. What I wanted to do is to we've got a growth diagnostic, which people have found very useful, and during lockdown, as we're coming out of lockdown now, then we've offered this as a free tool and as a guided tool. So one of our regional directors, so they're the most senior people in the organisation. We have 14 from Scotland down to Cornwall, from Wales to Essex. So we cover the whole country. And you can book a virtual diagnostic, and it will go through, there are 30-something odd questions, looking at business strategy, marketing strategy, sales strategy, so everything around growth, really. And it will show you the areas that you're stronger at, and weaker at. So that's the page on the website. And this, what you get at the end, is a full report. And this is an example of the report. As I say, it goes through business strategy, marketing strategy, and sales strategy, goes through your strengths and weaknesses, and makes some suggestions, and gives you a priority list for you to have a look at. And so that's the report. And in order to find that report, this is the homepage on the Boardroom Advisors website. You'll see our gold box on the left-hand side, which is our COVID-19 box, as it were. And there's you can see the arrow pointing to the box. Just click on that and follow your nose from there, and you'll be able to access this free diagnostic tool. Right, and that's really the end of the presentation. So thank you very much. We're going to have questions in a second. I've put up my LinkedIn, a LinkedIn picture, I guess, just as an aid memoir, really. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, do feel free to do so. Just mention that you saw this webinar, and if you want to contact me or any of my regional directors, or any of the 60 or so advisors that we've got, my contact details are there. So I'll just leave that slide up there for a moment. Alex, I'm kind of hoping that you're still there, and I'm kind of hoping we've got one or two questions. If not, we'll be finishing quite soon.
Yeah, I am here. I am here indeed. Yeah, just posting up for people to post up some questions, and we've got a bunch of comments from people throughout your presentation as well, John. So Rachel says, I like SWOT as well. Kath, I often still use it. Kath says, I love bio personas. PR is great for brand awareness, but the backlinks also help your SEO, double whammy. Jazz says, can this be applied to any size of company?
Simple answer is yes. And listen, the slides we've got up here, we've only got limited time. This is kind of just a slice of growth. The diagnostic goes into more detail. And yes, every size of company, from a one-man band to a $100 billion company, it's about analyzing analyzing the situation. It's about having a plan, and having a structure and a process. And yes, somebody mentioned, you mentioned, Alex, that somebody was talking about SWOT.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a great fan of SWOT from a business point of view, but you can also do it from a marketing point of view. The strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What are there in the business? And the other webinar that I do, which is around business strategy rather than just growth strategy, covers SWOT in some detail, as well as other tools. But yes, definitely applicable for all sizes of business.
Thanks. Okay, got loads of questions coming in, John, so
Okay.
I'll jump into those for you.
Yep.
Mark Taylor. Mark says, what's your approach to forecasting given the demand interruption arising from COVID-19?
That's a good one.
It's a big one.
Listen, forecasting is always tricky, and you know, I remember advising people about doing financial forecasting in a different situation, and they said, well, how do I know? It's just a guess. And forecasting is an educated guess. That's all it is. We don't have crystal balls, where we don't know the answers a lot of the time. And particularly in marketing, you don't know what's going to work. So a lot of forecasting is educated guess, and then test and measure. Particularly with marketing, it's, you know, when we were doing paid search for boardroom advisors, we did lots of testing, lots of measuring, found lots of it not very successful, but we found one or two bits that were. And marketing theory or growth theory is fine, but you need to test and measure, and that's the only way to do it, in my personal experience.
Yeah, test and test again. Absolutely.
Yep.
Joanne Boyd says, what type of companies are leveraging your growth diagnostic video call?
Yes, lots of different types of companies, really. I mean, we aim to be speaking mainly to funded startups, scale-ups, and SMEs, not to big corporates or to charities or so on. So it's mainly those types of companies. But the diagnostic, as with any growth or marketing or sales tools, can be done at any type of company and at any size. You know, it could be fintech, it could be manufacturing, it could be anything. The principles are still the same.
Kath's kind of following up on the last point, actually. Who's best to work on your growth strategy in your business? Everyone or just senior management?
Yeah, tricky, isn't it? Well, yeah, everybody has a role to play, and it's why I was talking about internal audiences before, because, you know, the person on the switchboard, the person who greets somebody that comes into the office, everybody has a role to play. I remember there was one, I think it was RNLI, and they had a value proposition which they showed to their staff, and they trained their staff. This is, you know, what is RNLI about? We save lives at sea. That's it. And it was like, wow. And if you ask the office cleaner, what does the RNLI stand for? She would know. We save lives at sea, because it's really simple. It's really powerful.
Yeah, that literally does what it says on the tin in that case, doesn't it? Yeah. Really simple. Let's have a quick look. How much needs to be done to underpin SWOTs with data and evidence, says Richard?
Yeah, interesting. That SWOT, I think, is great. Again, done in a brainstorming situation, group of people, hopefully the decision makers in the organization, directors, founders, whatever. And it's top of the head, and people don't criticize, and you get it up on the board and so on. And that isn't data focused, is it? But if once you drill down and you start to say, well, what are the big issues here that we really need to tackle? Let's say it's a weakness in your financial situation. Well, let's define what that weakness is. Let's have some data in there. Let's be precise. So what is our financial situation? Is it weak, or is it just a perception of weakness? So I always start with gut feel and instinct and getting ideas around the table. But then for the big issues, if you want to define them better, and also if you want to change something. So if, for example, in that example, if financial position is weak, then A, define what it is now, and B, define where it is you want it to get to. How are you going to know that you don't have a weak financial position? What data, what KPIs are you going to choose in order to go from A to B? So yes, I think very useful in terms of colouring in, as it were.
I'm just popping your details up here as well, John, so people can get in touch.
That's fine. Thank you.
Very easily. There we go, folks. Just pop those up for you. Lee says the RNLI story is similar to the NASA cleaner story. All staff need to understand it. Don't know that one, but I can kind of get the parallel from what you said there, Lee. Let's have a quick look. Quite a lot of comments, which I'll bring up, and maybe you can comment yourself on that, John. So Kath says SWOT is an underrated tool. I think it's really powerful, but not sure how many people use it to properly review their business. And Lee says, I agree, together with Pestle and the Boston Matrix as analysis tools. I don't know if I'm familiar with Pestle, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and listen, I've been a management consultant and a non-exec director and other such things for decades. I'm a great believer in these management tools. Most of them have an awful lot of sense. A lot of them cover similar ground. I do a webinar which is around business strategy, which looks at SWOT and looks at most analysis. Pestle is very, very good. There's lots of them. The important thing is, does it produce a result? And by that I mean not just a theory. A tool that just produces theory, or SWOT I think is good. It gets issues out on the table. What it doesn't do is do anything with those issues. It's like, okay, we've got a weakness in our financial situation. Okay, well, what now? It doesn't. The tool stops there. So I actually use, when looking at business strategy, I then use most analysis in order to take those issues and do things with them in order to drive actions on people's to-do list. And that, in that way, you don't just get stuck with theory. Theory has to be put into practice. And plans, whether it's a growth plan or whether it's a business plan, isn't something that you sit down and do once a year and then you shove it in the drawer and don't look at it. It should be a living, breathing, working document, and you should be looking at it on a regular basis. Small companies, perhaps quarterly; larger companies, perhaps even monthly. Are we going in the direction that we decided? Are the strategies working? If not, do we think again? They have to be living, breathing documents.
Yeah. Richard said, getting this right and authentically communicated is key in my experience. Gareth says, a lot of value propositions sound the same, so ironically, don't differentiate from anyone else.
Good point. Sorry, just to interrupt. Really good point. So value proposition, very different from, there are lots of statements that people have and stuff people put up on the wall, and we're going to be the best in this industry. And, it's not that. It's around how are we different? Why should people buy from us? Not because, and if it is around something general, like we provide the best service, well, be precise. One of Amazon's things, I'm not sure if it's in their value proposition, but it could be, is that we can deliver to you within an hour. And they can, in some instances, deliver within an hour. I've ordered stuff beginning of a day and had it at the end of the same day. That somehow should be wrapped into their value proposition. But you have to be precise, not just better service. It's quicker delivery in that particular example.
Yeah, absolutely. Kath says, the more staff understand where the company is going and why, the more they will be motivated to help reach that goal. Yeah, you get the buy-in then, don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Richard Antrim says, do you think, John, the effects of COVID will encourage companies to review their business going forward? A reality check.
Oh my God, yes. And if they haven't, what the heck are they doing?
Exactly.
Listen, lots of businesses started in the 2008 financial crisis. A crisis situation, yes, it's horrible, but there are always opportunities. And if you don't reassess what it is you're doing, who you're doing it to, how you're going to communicate your messaging, if you don't reassess all that in this type of situation, then you're likely to be one of those dinosaurs hit by the meteor. Don't be the dinosaur. Be out there, change, reevaluate your proposition, reevaluate who you're selling to and what you're selling. That's the message really of this whole webinar, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I hosted Lord Billamoria, founder of Cobra Beer and VP of the CBI, and Alan Barrett, co-founder of Grenade, the #1 sports nutrition brand in Europe. And both of those businesses were born out of the last recession. So there will be so many opportunities. And, I've hosted now over 100 of these webinars in the last 8 weeks. And, a number of those, forward-thinking business owners saying they've used this opportunity, John, to get a blank sheet of paper, reassess the business and gone, just because we've always done what we've always done, does that mean that it's right? Or if we started again now with a blank sheet of paper, what would our marketing look like? What would our HR look like, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Lee says framework, political, economic, social, tech, legal, ethics. Thank you.
Sorry, he's describing what PESTLE is. Yes.
Yeah, got him. Mark Freiberg Apostle says many businesses and supply chains are shrinking. Do you feel, John, that enough companies are reviewing their businesses?
I generally no. Companies don't, even without a pandemic, companies as a horrible generalization, but there are a lot of companies that don't assess their business strategy or their growth strategy on a regular enough basis. It needs to be done regularly. And doubly, trebly regularly in the current situation. Use the time to reassess and have a plan for moving forward.
Yeah. And what do you think? Just to finish up now, I'll give somebody the opportunity to ask the last question if they'd like to drop one into the chat box there. And again, thank you everybody from all over Europe who's actually watching this. It's brilliant. And those of you watching on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube as well, thank you for joining in today. Those of you who've asked as well a couple of questions with regards to replays and slides. So I've posted up John's, and we can see the slide there as well with John's contact details. Could also send you all an email from John. So if John gets something over across to me by Monday, say, we can send you some links and information as well. And yeah, replays, literally as soon as we finish this, the replay is available live here and people literally watch it straight away, and we'll then transport it over to our YouTube channel where you can watch it there as well. Here we go. Okay, so I say one question. There we go. We've got a couple. Okay, we'll take both of them. How have you found more growth recently? Says Mark.
Have I particularly found growth? The Boardroom Advisors has done reasonably well in the crisis. We were expanding rapidly. We've I guess flatlined during the crisis, but we haven't suffered in that sense. And I rather imagine that our growth will pick up again as we come out of lockdown.
Yeah. And let me dive back into where are we? Yeah, so Jazz, super session, thanks all. Joanne Boyd, great session, thanks John. Alan, thank you John. Some gems. Alistair Cook, I've enjoyed the presentation, John, thanks. Yeah, so maybe last question I've got here is what should your priority be for the next 4 weeks as a business owner, John? And it's probably many ways you can answer that, but maybe you've got a couple of takeaways to leave some closing notes maybe for us.
Well, in terms of everybody's priority has to be first and foremost financial. Have you got enough financial resources in order to continue trading and in order to move the business forward? If not, take advantage of some of the government schemes and do that quickly. Once you've done that, then in terms of growth, yes, just having a look perhaps at some of the slides and some of the information that I've been giving out. Where are you now? What's been successful for you? Is it still going to be successful moving forward? Stop, reassess, come out with a growth plan based on what's been successful in the past, what changes you might logically see coming out from the COVID changes. Make educated guesses. Don't be afraid to make educated guesses. Nobody knows the answers, particularly in this one, because this is the first time we've been here. So make educated guesses, put strategies into place, and then monitor the success of those strategies. And don't be afraid to adjust if things aren't quite working as you intended. But have the plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, we're into the into June. We're looking at, going into Q3. I think there's never a better opportunity to reassess the business. For those of you who haven't done that, I think now is a great time to do that. We're seeing, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel with regards to different parts of the economy opening up as well. So never a better time to do that. You can get hold of John at boardroomadvisors.co.uk. Slides will be available. Again, you can watch the replay to talk you through those as well. So loads of other thank yous coming in, John, and I'll add mine to those as well, and wish everybody a very happy end to their Friday and a very good weekend as well.
Thanks very much, Alex, and thanks very much, everybody, for listening.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Cheers, John.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.